All right, if you don't mind, just start off by introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background and your connections, maybe, or background with both academic and librarianship, and then also with any AI.
Mimi Calter. My title is Vice Provost and University Librarian at Washington University in St. Louis, or WashU. I've been at WashU for a little bit shy of 4 years, so coming up on my 4 year anniversary. Before WashU, I spent 16 years at Stanford University, and I had a number of different titles. My last title there was Deputy University Librarian. And then so I've been in academic libraries for 20 odd years at this point. Before Stanford, I was in corporate librarianship. So I was at Goldman Sachs for 5 years and PricewaterhouseCoopers for about 3 years before that. And that was coming out of library school, I was doing the corporate library thing. And I will say I do always feel that experience in the sort of business realm and that scope really has impacted the way I think about, even as I've been in academic libraries much longer than I was in the corporate world, but I do think I bring that perspective when I sort of think about where libraries are going.
Yeah,
Um,
it's that's amazing. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like having different backgrounds and perspectives that bringing that into librarianship is really important, and especially in the age of AI, having different perspectives and experiences. And I've been at a lot of different schools and different districts in my career, and when I come to a place where I see people that have been there and never have any other experience, like the limitations that they have because of that. I'm really intrigued with your background with the corporate world of librarianship. I don't really know anything about the corporate world, but of librarianship, but to tie that in with what's happening right now with AI is going to be. I can't wait to hear a little more about it.
So I'll throw a little story in there because the story that I like to tell is in my days at Goldman Sachs. My title was knowledge manager, which frankly is still probably the best title I've ever had. I
Yeah.
I was knowledge manager I was on the investment banking side in the information communications and entertainment practice. I was supporting that subject specialty with it, basically as a reference and research librarian, although I also had there was a strong knowledge management component to the work that I was doing. I was tracking areas of expertise. I was tracking work product and managing materials and responses. Anyway, but I was on the thing that made the difference was as that knowledge manager, and in that knowledge manager role, I was on the ground with my team, with the practice area that I was working with. There was still at that time, and I know it's gone now, but there was still, when I started, a residual library that was a central library that was, at least a couple floors away, and often much further away. And the the services that I could provide as the knowledge manager and as someone who had a strong relationship with the bankers that I was supporting and who sort of knew what they were working on was so different from the service that was possible to provide out of that central library. It was, and I was there as the sort of transition in how these kinds of information resource services were provided. And I certainly see some parallels in
Mhm.
the ways that things are moving, as we're sort of transitioning to AI and thinking about how we use AI. And that relationship piece still remains key, and I think it's really key for librarians generally. Is that direct relationship, being able to work with someone who has a question or needs reference support or is working on a piece of research. There's being, especially in an academic library setting, being able to be integrated with and integral to research teams and be actually supporting the research aspects of the university's work is a growing need and a growing place where I see a lot of engagement.
So you're talking about relationship, just personal relationships, professional relationships with colleagues,
Right. Yeah,
stakeholders and patrons and
yeah. on the kinds of relationships that you get when you're working face to face and and closely with someone. The fact that I was in my Goldman Sachs days that I was sitting on the floor with the bankers and I would bump
Mm,
into people in the hallway gave me a very different kind of opportunity to work with people than the traditional librarians who were who someone had to pick up the phone and someone had to do some outreach to reach out to them. So within my own library, I strongly support having our subject librarians, our subject liaisons, be as much as possible integrated in with their departments and the teams that they are supporting.
oh, that's great. And share a little bit about your background or thoughts about AI in general. Like what perspective do you and experience or interest do you have that you bring into the library that you oversee? And also roughly how many staff do you oversee altogether? Like just under your,
WashU Libraries is about 140. It
okay.
goes up and down depending on where we are with, but it's about 140 staff. Um,
Okay.
the My relationship with AI is is with is as a user and sort of thinking about AI as a tool. I will not try to pretend that I am a technologist. um, I I value folks who are sort of knowledgeable about the ins and outs of the tools. Um, I I want to have an appropriate number of them on my staff and able to work with me. But I recognize, for me, AI, and particularly generative AI, because I think that is
Right.
typically what we're talking about when we're talking
Right.
about AI. But I always do like
Hmm.
to be specific about that. Like, the emergence of generative AI is has is really this is clearly a valuable tool, and I think the real challenge for it's a challenge for libraries, but it's a challenge for academia writ large. Frankly, it's a challenge for sort of everybody, is sort of finding a way to effectively use this tool and sort of understand what the parameters are, what the expectations are of the tool.
Hmm.
So a lot of my engagement is really at um, my engagement with AI is as a user and thinking about how to be an effective user, thinking about how to help others be effective users is a big piece of the role that I see myself playing.
Yeah, I mean, what you said right at the start was just, it really spoke to me about not claiming to be an expert. I mean, there's so much to understanding the different aspects and the different components to it. It's overwhelming. I mean, I have a really deep capacity to like learn about AI, like obsessive almost, but I still like feel that overwhelm, and I think that's a very common theme. People, it can cause people to feel insecure and want to shy away with it, and it takes like courage to be vulnerable when trying to learn and to also lead other people. And not part of my whole belief system is that every librarian can be leaders in different capacity, and that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about in a second here. But when it comes to like trying to inspire change in an organization and to have librarians try and learn and adapt and integrate this new advanced thing that's somewhat scary and overwhelming and difficult. If you don't have leaders that are willing to express their own concerns and their own vulnerabilities, then it's hard to hope that everyone can embrace it and try to overcome their own issues as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have been, I've been in a lot of these conversations. I and I think I see us doing a better job of sort of moving past this, but I know in, sort of looking back a year, there was a lot of people throwing their hands up and concerns about the environmental impact of AI. And,
Right.
and that's a real thing and something we need to talk about and think about and deal with and address. Like you can't leave that out of the conversation because because that impact is challenging. But you also can't let that be. You can't just throw up your hands and say no, like we're not gonna,
Right.
we're not going to participate. At the same time, I spent a lot of time working on issues around copyright and
Mm.
sort of access to educational resource access, even larger than copyright. There are real, legitimate, important conversations to be had about rights, about intellectual property rights, and how AI interacts, and generative AI in particular interacts with those rights. Like that it is a absolutely appropriate concern and area of conversation, but also it can't be something that stops you from from
Yeah.
thinking about how to use the tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was
The
some
whole, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
no, there was some really interesting work done. It was a joint project from Association for Research Libraries and uh, CNI, and that looked that
CNI.
Coalition for Networked Information,
Okay.
that we did a lot of I think it was those two. I'll have to double check. That did scenario planning around the emergence and development of generative AI, and it was none of it was about the technological aspects. It was all about how it how the tool got adopted, and it was some of the most interesting conversations I've had is the participation in that scenario planning project. Because what happens if there is strong is it more strongly governmental control? Is this something that is very corporate forward and there is not a strong societal buy-in? Like there it was sort of really thinking about how the sort of how the societal impact and work plays out, and was really important to thinking about how we think about libraries engaging as a with along with the AI. So I think that is absolutely worth looking at and thinking about is that whole scenario planning approach.
Yeah. I mean, the world of the topic of ethics with AI has, I
Yes.
think, been the most popular subtopic of underneath AI for the last couple of years. And I mean, all that, what you said, copyright, ethical use of it. I mean, there's just so much involved with it. And, we keep hearing this, and this is something I wrote about in my book too, about how um, that we're librarians are experts, in information, and our ability in background and experience in information literacy just in general, like puts us in a great position to help our colleagues and other stakeholders to learn about these issues and to deal with them. I mean, information literacy is now like, I mean,
Right.
it's such at the forefront, and people just don't understand. And there's just so much to try to wrap your head around. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Let's talk a little bit about research. So I was in a professional development session with a hand of mostly academic librarians, and I gave a presentation about research agents, and like a little bit about explaining what some of the latest advanced research tools are. And all the large language models have this, well, maybe not all of them, but most of them have this ability to do deep research, and I pay $20 a month for three different tools that have this deep research tool. So I shared some of the like progress that I've seen since they first were introduced, which was around November and December of 2024 is when they first got released. And just in the first, 5 or 6 months, the growth that they were was just phenomenal. Like the improvements that were made. And one librarian asked me a question that she was a research librarian, and she kind of stumped me. I had to stall for a second because I wasn't sure. I thought of the greatest answer afterwards, which was too late. But because she's like, her question related to, you know, the need for humans to do this research and the benefits. Like her, AI is threatening to, replace a lot of jobs, and it's threatening to upend the world of work in many, many areas. So, um, what's the quick answer that I wish I would have said right away is relating to like the need that our patrons, our students, and our colleagues have to learn about what these tools were. I mean, I kind of offended her, I think, but by showing the tools, and I probably looked like I was excited, and I think that was mistaken for like I'm like, yay, everything's perfect with AI, and that was not it at all. And my reaction now is more like, we have to kind of learn this stuff so that we could help everyone. Um, so, can you speak a little bit about the research connection side with AI, and what does that landscape look from your lens?
So I do think that the in the future AI tools, particularly, but by no means exclusively generative AI, because I don't want to leave. There's a lot of other areas of and aspects of AI that have, that the generative is the hot topic, but it's a much broader field than that. Will be more and more integrated into the work that we do. And I think the challenge that we're facing right now is it's such early days that we haven't figured out the path forward and the way that that will happen. And I have heard, I think this was kind of where I was going with my earlier comment. I think that, we as librarians who do, we often have an instructional role in supporting research, and particularly in supporting students in learning to do research, because we're in an
Hmm.
academic setting. um, is to, we have this role of sort of understanding not just how do we use these tools effectively, but how do we help other people use these tools effectively. And the best practices there just haven't been worked out yet. I mean, the tools are changing themselves are changing too rapidly. I've been in a conversation recently where someone was talking about, like, we did this project and we learned about a lot about it, and by the time we finished the project, like the technology had changed, but it was still really valuable to do the project, like,
Yeah.
because that's, you have to sort of be sort of
Lay the
understand.
groundwork.
Right, you're laying the groundwork, you're seeing you're sort of seeing the way these things work. So I do think it is important for us to be thoughtful about how these tools can be used effectively. I'm in the middle of the sort of pedagogy discussions around some of this, because I'm on an academic campus, and we work regularly with the Center for Teaching and Research. There is absolutely frustration from the student body in not having uh, consistency and, sort of consistent overarching policy around how AI tools can be used in the
Mm.
classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
um, there is and a certain amount of frustration from faculty as well. So I'm certainly involved in conversations around sort of trying to build out those policies. And at the same time, of course, there's a lot of concern that those policies will start to get stale really quickly. So,
Right, right. Yeah.
how do you simultaneously have that policy and stay ahead of it? The you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different opinions. But overarchingly, what I've seen is faculty are struggling to understand how they can assess the understanding and the learning of their students, right? And so,
Mhm.
the things that you might have done in the past with some of with writing and, uh, you know, um, AI can do some of that work. um, and you as an instructor still have to be able to properly assess what your student has, the learning capacity, the learning that your student has taken on board.
Right,
And
right.
that challenge is sort of figuring out how to do that, and it starts to turn into this cat and mouse thing, and you start to get the Turnitin thing and detecting AI use, and and there's general agreement that, well, that I won't say that's everybody, but generally speaking, the faculty that I talk to want to find a way to use AI tools effectively, and just haven't, and to actually integrate them and to help in the kinds of situations where, there there's huge consensus that AI tools are a great support for folks for who are, whether it's English as a second language or some other language, right? Where you're trying to cross language barriers, like being able to have the AI tool can really go a long way. The review paper where you sort of had to, where you spent a year looking through everything and sort of digesting. AI is great in a lot of ways at digesting things, but it's still not perfect, right? It's still far from perfect in a lot of
Right.
different ways, and you still have to have that. You have to have a mastery of the subject in order to be able to assess how well the tool is doing, and how you do that at scale when you're trying to work with a classroom full of, whether it's 30 or 130 students,
Right.
is
Right.
something that folks haven't completely worked out yet. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I see. I mean, I keep seeing a lot of conversations through LinkedIn and amongst, library leaders about more attention toward the process, the instructional process. Like, what are the steps that students need to show in how they're learning it, and moving a little bit away from, just the model of, prove it to me in a paper. There's so many different ways to assess student learning, and trying to like wrap our heads around like how can students prove what they've learned by and what process they used to come to that learning is I think a hot conversation lately. I don't really have too many answers yet for that, but yeah, I know. I mean, I've seen when I was at the National Library Conference last year, the ALA conference. I listened to a professor gave us a presentation about AI to the librarians about with his students, and he talked at length about changing, just adapting to the way he was teaching and adjusting, and the way things used to go before. Like, he just had
You
to
have to
adjust it.
adapt pedagogical approaches. You had to adapt pedagogical approaches for online teaching. You're going to have to adapt
Yeah.
them for this. The parallel that comes up regularly on campus here is the advent of the calculator, and particularly like the fancy graphing
Hmm.
calculators, right? Like,
Hmm.
there was a time when those things were banned and you couldn't bring them into the testing environment and all that kind of thing. And now, like, it's part of the syllabus as to that you have to have one. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
we've gotten to the point where we know how to use them effectively and integrate them into to the
Hmm.
to the pedagogy. And I definitely see a sense that we will get there, but we're not there yet.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're like an expert with library leadership. What advice might you give other library leaders, or maybe not the highest level, but part of this podcast and my book is for all library types, so K-12 librarians, academic, and public librarians. And there's a lot of I mean, there's so many different size libraries, especially in the public library world, where there's directors that are in charge of smaller staffs. And so there's a lot of library leaders out there that are like now trying to figure out AI in so many different aspects. So what advice might you give them to help them?
I think, the first thing, and I think this comes through in this coming through in what I've been saying so far, but it is just don't be afraid of the technology. Like,
Okay.
it's here, and embrace it and find a path forward. So don't be afraid of the technology, and really do take a step. Don't be afraid of failing with it. Don't expect that it's going to be perfect and get everything right. Um, and absolutely be aware and educate yourself as to the flaws and challenges with the technology. And for generative AI, I mean, we've covered a lot of this, right? That includes IP and rights questions. This includes other ethical concerns around things like bias in training data. Like you absolutely need to be aware that you need to know that this thing hallucinates and understand how to work with hallucinating. You need to be aware of the environmental impact of how these of how the tools work. And just sort of take that into account. And at the same time, you need to move forward and
Yeah.
come up with some projects to work with the school. What I have seen is that organizations that have done even basic like let's have a Thursday night get together and talk about AI
Hmm.
just like lunchtime discussion group things. That stuff is hugely popular,
Yeah.
and it can be really helpful to get people together to be able to recognize that there's a lot of folks who are trying to find their way, and and there are ways to work together, and also just don't be afraid to talk to your peers and colleagues because there's
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's such great advice because I've interviewed a few leaders that lead national, they're like nationally known to help mostly K-12 schools, districts, learn how to integrate it. And that's been a recurring theme is one of the first things that they do is they give people a chance to talk and share and kind of address whatever fears they might be having. And then as soon as that happens, it gives them a chance to like, okay, now open up a little bit and like move on. If professional development is set up in a way where it's just like they're diving right into, doing stuff or just listening and they don't get a chance to speak, then that makes it harder to open up that door to learn and grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. Um, okay, let's see. What else can we ask here? Of all the things that are involved with AI, if you could pick just one thing that you're most interested and passionate about, what would that one topic be?
I really do think it is I've said this already, but I really do think is this interface between the tools and the pedagogy.
Mm,
We are doing a lot of thinking. Uh, Pedagogical approaches have gone through a lot of change in recent years. Yeah, it's like so COVID moved a lot of things online that we didn't think were going to get
mhm,
moved online, and it's changed the way we think about instruction. And we're much more embracing of things like flipped classrooms. That's true in libraries as much as it is in the sort of more traditional classroom spaces. Um, and and sort of thinking about how this tool works at that interface. There's when I talk about AI with my staff, there's sort of two ways that we talk about AI. The first is sort of using AI in librarianship, and I think there are some really interesting things happening that we should be talking about and engaged with around metadata creation
mm,
and there's a lot of library workflow things that can and should be automated by AI, right? I am excited about thinking about getting more of our special collections materials processed because we can use AI to come up with metadata and improve those workflows dramatically.
mhm.
And that's part of the reason that I'm not afraid of AI like taking over too many jobs. Like what I want it to do is advance. We've got so much work to do. Like
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
I want AI to take on that work. So there's interesting stuff happening there. But the really interesting and challenging piece is for me is at that interface of pedagogy. Is
Yes.
just not just how do you use it to automate existing workflows or rework existing workflows, much as that's important to do, but how do you take it to the next step and build it into instruction and really change not just the workflow, but the way that we think about approaching the workflow.
Right. See, I love that. And it just reminds me of the the stages that our society has already gone through, like when the advent of the internet, and then when smart devices and the world of apps, all of a sudden, here we are. There's 3 million apps, pick 300, and how do you learn how to teach and integrate that into instruction? And um, so it's like we've been here before. This is different, of course, because it's got
But
so
it
many
always
other
is.
aspects.
Yes, I mean
Right, right.
this is this is the move from the OPAC to, this is the move from the card catalog to the OPAC. This
Yeah,
is the move, like
right.
it's the same. This is the same thing.
Yes.
I mean, it's different, but the process is the same. The other
Yeah,
item,
there's so many. Yep.
the other quote that I will throw out that is sort of in support of this is, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who can use AI better than you can is going to take your job. And I
Yes.
absolutely think that that's true. That
Right,
is
right.
very much where I get to the pedagogical piece of it. Like this is an important tool, and you need to know how to use this tool, and you need to know what the flaws of this tool are, but also the major benefits of this tool, and
Yeah,
think about
yeah.
yeah.
I was talking with the principal recently about, setting up professional development, and after talking for a little while, I realized that this person had not ever even used any large language model, no, not ChatGPT or any other chatbot that, a generative AI tool. And then it just dawned on me, I'm like, wow, it's hard to expect, your staff to embrace how to teach and learn with these tools if you've never, got your hands on them yourself. So I think that's an important part of learning too with professional development is giving people a chance to first talk and address things, and then learning kind of what possibilities there are, but then having actual hands-on time to to experiment and to like see how they work in different ways. I think that's a important piece that might be missing. I'm sure that just there's other. I mean, if I talk with this one principal, I know there's more.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I, I
so
am I am quite certain.
yeah. All right, last question.
Okay.
Before I ask the last question, is there anything else that you want to share that we might be missing that we didn't touch on yet?
I I I think I'm ready to move on to the last question.
Okay, last question. Um, any advice? I'm sorry, I have two questions. First is any advice for a new librarian or someone getting ready that is interested in becoming a librarian?
We have our summer interns are starting next week, so we have a couple of summer interns who are coming into the library to learn about librarianship and
Okay.
potential get about the potential ways forward. Um, and my advice is to think big. I mean, I think there is, you know, the libraries are not the, I have my interns coming in who are coming in with this sort of fresh perspective. I talk regularly also to alumni and folks who sort of remember spending evenings in the library, and the model is so different. Like
Mm,
being able to sort of understand the direction that libraries are going, the role that libraries play, uh, as catalyzing the use of information is the phrase that
mm,
we've started using in our mission statement. Like
mm,
we want information to be accessible, we want information to be used, and we see our role as catalyzing that use and that access. And sort of being able to think big and understand the ways that tools like Gen AI or whatever comes after Gen AI
right.
enable us to support that work, I think is really important.
Oh, that's great. All right, last question, I promise. So the podcast is called For the Love of Libraries. Can you share a story or a memory of either a librarian or a library that you used to visit, or a colleague, or anything for the love of libraries?
I will call out. This is kind of the personal memory, but and this goes back to my early days at Stanford. But Dame Lynn Brindley, who is the first female chief executive of the British Library, was on the external advisory board for the Stanford libraries during my time there, and I got to work with her and interact with her. She was an incredible person, uh, personable, but also inspirational. Really insightful about the business of libraries, the politics of libraries, and there's plenty
Mm,
of politics there. And had a relatively early in my time at Stanford, I had a trip to London, and she took time to meet with me. She showed me
Okay.
got me a tour of the some of the back of the house of the British Library. So anyway, Dame Lynn
Okay.
Brindley is my shout out.